Well, the main thing that I object to is raising the debt ceiling $4 or $5 trillion.
Rand votes no on everything, but never has any practical or constructive ideas. His ideas are actually crazy losers.
Rand Paul went on CNBC this morning, and this is making the rounds to discuss Trump's big, beautiful bill. There was some good, and there was some, maybe not so good, but I like Rand Paul. He's been a friend of the show. I agree with him on probably more than most people who hold public office, but I still find him irritating, and I don't know how I feel about that. Here he is discussing the debt ceiling.
Well, the main thing that I object to is raising the debt ceiling $4 or $5 trillion. That's an indication that we'll borrow that much. It's an indication that we'll put the debt on the back burner. We'll have no more discussion of it for a year or two. I'm just not going to take responsibility for the debt. The debt has always been a Democrat problem and a big government problem. Once this bill votes and this debt ceiling goes through, the debt is owned by the GOP, and there is no more campaigning and saying this is the Democrats. It will be owned by the Republicans, and I think that's a huge mistake.
It's a bunch of crap.
Well, I understand. Here's the thing. I understand what he's saying, but there is no world in which any bill gets passed where the debt ceiling isn't raised because it hasn't happened.
Republicans have raised the debt ceiling already.
Yeah.
It's not like this is a new line we've never crossed before.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm saying that's a bunch of crap. It's the first time I've seen that. I'm like, well, hold on. I'm pretty sure we've raised the debt ceiling as Republicans before. Maybe it's not the level of raise that you're seeing, but Donald Trump, with COVID and everything else, it massively increased the debt.
And you're not going to...
What hill are we dying on here?
Well, exactly. Do you want to raise a debt ceiling for a bunch of free healthcare and Medicaid for all and free abortions, whatever it is? Or... for example, right now we're looking at significant tax cuts, which in the short term, right, is something that needs to be paid for. And then in the long term, it'll institutionalize some kind of economic growth. What about military spending, border security, right? Which, again, we know long term will have positive economic benefits. I mean, it'll have an impact. But right out of the chute to say, hey, we've always pretty much raised the debt ceiling. But, right now, I don't want to, right? I want this to be the first time that we don't when he's facing more opposition than any president, really, in modern history, even from within his own party. So I get to sit this one out. Like, okay, what's the proposed solution? I get it. I don't want to raise the debt ceiling either. But there is no universe in which that's not the reality right now.
Yeah.
And this is why Democrats often in office... Right, they're not constrained by any type of fiscal responsibility. So it's almost like Republicans are fighting with their hands tied behind their back because the left just goes blank check to everything. And I get it. I understand we want to be principled and we do want to be fiscally responsible. But at a certain point, you also have to rack up some wins while you can get them. And here's Rand Paul discussing, I believe as well, the spending cuts.
If you had to cut this budget to effectively make it balance or at least make yourself feel like it is a fiscally responsible bill, what would you actually cut?
Everywhere.
Okay. So we already see what that kind of looks like. Social Security, right? Cuts can be made into the fraud and waste. That's I think we spent about $907 billion. And you can look at the interest on debt as $570 billion, something like that.
Yeah, that's crazy.
You have Medicare, $550 billion. We're looking at fraud and waste there. The military, the VA, really, $749 billion. Keep in mind, this is not the annual budget bill. This is basically a reconciliation bill. That's important to note. So actually, Stephen Miller did tweet an explanation of what this big, beautiful bill, as it's being coined, is and it isn't. He posted this. He said, under Senate budget rules, you cannot cut discretionary spending, only mandatory in a reconciliation bill. The big, beautiful bill is not an annual budget bill and does not fund the departments of government. Instead, it includes the single largest welfare reform in American history, along with the largest tax cut and reform in American history. And that is true. There are things that you can do and there are things that you can't do. And I know that the bumper sticker slogan, and I do believe in reducing the overall debt, and we have to do that through reducing our deficit. I do, but you have to understand what levers are available to you to pull at this moment in time. And I understand that Rand Paul is principled, and I generally agree with him, but he's missing the mark here. Here he is discussing, I believe, something that hopefully he's right on, the economic growth impact.
Do you think if this bill goes through or some version of it and you don't get what you want, that your colleagues are going to pay for that, or do you think that the public is accepting of this, wants this?
You know, I think the most important thing coming up in the near future is the second quarter growth. We had negative growth in the first quarter, and that was somewhat offset by huge amounts of imports pouring in at the last point to try to avoid the tariffs. If we have negative growth in the second quarter, I think you're going to see a generalized freak out by all the protectionists and all those wanting to, throw this tariff, that tariff, and in a really reckless way around. You're going to see a reassessment if we have negative growth in the second quarter. I can't predict the future, but if we do, I think Katie bar the door. There's really going to be an upset around here.
Yeah, well, here's the thing, though. We already are seeing growth. Yeah. So you can bring up the reference. Atlanta Fed predicts 4.6% GDP growth in Q2. Remember when Donald Trump, I believe they laughed and scoffed at him when he said 4 or 5% GDP growth. Mm-hmm. Remember he said 3%? He said, I think I'd like to see 4 or 5. People said, no way. Now, that's a prediction. And by the way, the revenues on tariffs, they're already up 168% in the last 3 months. Now, I get that you have to balance that against, for example, the price of goods and inflation. But right now, we're seeing pretty good inflation numbers compared to Biden. We're seeing pretty good unemployment numbers, pretty good compared to Biden, labor force participation rate. And consumer spending right now actually beat the predictions, the expectations throughout this spring. So consumer spending is still strong, 168% increase in the last 3 months from the tariffs. Objectively, Rand Paul is wrong on this, in my opinion. He's just not correct.
And I'm a little frustrated by how he's going about this, too. Like, I understand that there are some things that maybe people have as their main cause.
Right.
But it's not just being myopic. It's lying to the American public and saying, well, the GOP will own this several times before. I wanted to confirm because I'm not crazy, right? We've raised this before, right? I mean, just tell us what your number is then, because we're not living in a world where it's possible to have zero budget deficit, meaning we're not adding to the debt every single year until you guys can get there. And how might we actually achieve that? What cuts would you make? I would cut everything. That's fantastic. I'm so glad you said that, because DOGE has a lot of options for you to make those things permanent. I think they just brought forward a bill to maybe make $94 billion or something like that, maybe pass that into law. I think DOGE had over $500 billion in proposed cuts. Can we maybe get around to that?
Right.
Would that be a good place to start?
Yeah.
You can't pay down your debt until you stop adding to it. We're adding to it right now, so work on that.
There definitely could be greater cuts here, but the big reason is because of the Republican Party, not necessarily because of Donald Trump and DOGE. And I don't like the way Elon Musk went about that either.
No,
you don't go to the media when that's an issue. But look, this is one of those issues where no one is going to be happy. And President Trump himself is not happy. He just posted this on Truth this morning.
Rand votes no on everything, but never has any practical or constructive ideas. His ideas are actually crazy losers. The people of Kentucky can't stand him. This is a big growth bill.
I think the people of Kentucky kind of like it.
I think they
so let's
kind of
just
like
be
it.
honest. But
Toilet brush head, they call him.
that's true.
They always, I would never say this, they say, whoa, his head looks like a toilet brush. I say, it does. Wow. I just cleaned my toilet with a Rand Paul this morning.
It's a brand.
And it's like Mr. Clean. And I like Rand Paul mostly, and I like President Trump mostly, and I'm hoping that they can work this out. But again, sometimes this is just the byproduct of this actually being the party of ideas, whereas the left, it's fall in line. It's an authoritarian worldview, and so they fall in line and do the bidding of mainly the biggest lobbyists and their donors.
Well, my problem, too, is that, we do want to get something done. I don't want people to abandon their principles, but I want them to start further down the line. I want them to start earlier so that when we can get something through, we actually take advantage of it, because the tax cut's becoming permanent. That's very good for a lot of people. Putting in work requirements, I hate saying that there's cuts to Medicare, Medicaid, all the SNAP program, all the benefits that programs are talking about, like, we're just cutting it. Well, in a lot of ways, we're just making it to where you have to have work requirements, and we're extending the age in some of these. And we're saying you maybe can't buy certain products with this, but I know Josh Hawley is somebody who doesn't support this because of that. Mm-hmm. And I don't like that. I'm like, well, give us your thing, because like you're holding this up for this. I think Tillis has said basically he doesn't like it because it rolls back the Green New Deal stuff, or I'm like, oh, okay, the environmental stuff. Okay, here we go. Yeah. This is you guys just playing politics like always. Work further back. down the line. Don't wait until right now. You guys know this stuff is out there. You know it's coming, and this is an opportunity for you to squeeze and try to get your thing. And it's like, guys, I'm just tired of it. I just want stuff to get done in a positive direction.
Just put it in context. Sometimes you have people like, how have we not gotten voter ID to be a thing?
Because
this is
stuff
how.
like this.
This is how.
Yes.
Because right now you have the choice, hey, work requirements and identification requirements for social safety benefits. Get that done and then make progress. I mean, you don't go from, if the first time you go into the gym lifting weights, you don't go from not able to squat the bar to 4 plates right away, right? It's incremental progress. And often Republicans want all of it right away. It's like, well, you're not going to have it. You're not going to have it. Now, if we get to midterms and it's just increase in spending after increase in spending, and it's, hey, then there will be some consequences. But at least let Donald Trump, let this administration face the consequences for their actual decisions, not because you held them up.
Yeah.
The gridlock ends up being just as corrosive if you actually want to win, is my opinion. Hey, thanks for watching. If you liked what you saw, you can click around and watch one of these videos on YouTube, or head on over to Rumble and subscribe, where I am live every weekday at 11 a.m. Eastern. Live on Rumble. YouTube is dead. Rumble did it. And on Rumble, you can say